Amazing that we would be having a climate change conversation. My name is Pete Martinez, a former IBM vice president and now the current chairman of Civotech Bioinformatics and Raise Link. Okay. Most of the emphasis of my work is on artificial intelligence. I'm also a graduate of University of Miami, class of 1975 BC. You're in for a treat. This distinguished panel of star-studded talent is very unique and very handpicked for one specific reason. These are the change agents for the transformation we're about to go through. Very specifically, we chose a multidisciplinary team. Multidisciplinary because an approach to climate change or resiliency will not be a single discipline approach. So what we have done is bring in scientists, technologists, and entrepreneurs to work together to define new models very proactively. Give you a very, very important example. Ben was talking about the ability to simulate change, to actually predict. For the most part, a lot of our databases today give you a statistical sample of what happened. Analytics, however, tells you why it happened and what's likely to happen next. Our ability to actually simulate what could happen if we change the variables is probably the best opportunity that we have, because we can actually create an ROI model. That's a foreign term to most scientists, but to business, it is the sustainability model of what we're talking about. So if you say, if I invest in the following, here's what the net result is going to be. So I will take my resources and specifically allocate them to a specific problem, and the ability to resolve, very, very key. This is why the entrepreneurs, the business folks are very important. What Ben talked about is very critical. Right now, the scientific community is looking for a voice and credibility to the overall impact. We, the business community, are starting to listen very, very clearly because it impacts our businesses. So we're very proactively engaging with the science and the technology. Why is technology so critical in this space? Technology will be the catalyst for a lot of the change. One, because we can capture significantly more information than we've ever had before. Second, our ability to synthesize and analyze that information. And third, the ability to make it actionable. What do we do about it? Which is fundamentally what we're all trying to accomplish. This is a multi-domain exercise. It is not just about a measurement of a given CO2 or a given sea level rise. This is a global impact that is not only to the infrastructure, but also to the economy, to the education, to the transportation, and to the health of a given community. So the multi-domain model is very critical. Lastly, I want to implore a model that says we're working on the redefinition from being reactive to a given situation to being proactive, predictive, and personalized. Let's work those backwards. Personalized is what Ben was talking about of hyper-locality. Personalizes to a given geography, to a given demography, or to a given a special group that we're focusing in. The technology will allow us to provide that. Second, the predictivity, which is we're able to simulate and predict things that are going to happen at a point in time, at a geographical point in time. That's unique. And third, proactive. We're no longer reacting to the changes. We're being very proactive as an approach. So I am delighted to introduce you the panel today. Each one will give you about a 5-minute perspective of what their angle and their perspective is on these changes and their approach to it and their skills. And then we're going to open it up to a few questions along the way. So first, let's start with Tony. Tony has provided a visionary approach to what a smart city looks like, and he's very engaged right now in terms of the development of groundbreaking type of opportunities in order to engage.
Thank you. Great to be here at University of Miami. Go Canes. I know it's a big moment for you all. I'm a native Floridian and been in Miami for multiple decades, and have had the privilege to work in such exciting communities like the Wynwood Arts District, Overtown, Downtown, and Little Haiti most recently. We just launched the Future of Cities Climate and Innovation Hub. That's really a center for climate innovation, climate solutions, and community resilience, being in an underserved community where climate gentrification and other issues around equity and inclusion kind of dovetail into climate and into solutions that we're talking about. So when we talk about smart cities, again, I think a lot of people get lost in the technology of it, and a lot of people get lost in kind of the details around, well, what's the purpose of it? And I'm really looking at human-centric solutions, really more focused on wise cities, as opposed to smart cities, and how can we create places where technology is a value add, but it's not controlling our life? How can we get to a place where, AI is working for us and not against us? And I'm a big technology guy and entrepreneurship, and I really am excited about all the gadgets and the innovation and all the work that's being done in digital twins. And as a real estate developer that's worked in communities that for multiple decades, and people are like, well, nothing's happened in Wynwood for the last 15 years. It's like, oh, a lot has happened, but it's the software, it's not just the hardware and the infrastructure like we talked about. It's the building community first before building infrastructure or a specific building. But I think buildings are analogous to trees, right? They're fixed hardware, they're fixed things that stay there, but the root system and the technology within these buildings can make them interoperable, can make them adaptable, and make them more resilient with all of the smart city solutions that are being implemented today. So I think I'm very encouraged by the integration of blockchain, AI, IoT devices as it looks to create more security and resilience within business, buildings and within public places like schools and universities and hospitals. Also, the technology that has evolved around indoor air quality, and UV and all the stuff that's happening. We've installed a train system which is 50% more efficient and really focuses on indoor air quality and can really recycle air much more rapidly. So I think the pandemic has actually accelerated the adoption of some of these technologies. But again, a lot of people are not aware of what's happening, inside the walls or in the networks. And I think it's important to also bring the public into the understanding that these tools are really here to help solve problems. And how do we make it so that we're, implementing appropriate technologies that are benefiting humans and not really focus on a future that's really for robots, or that's really kind of a dystopian future that none of us want to see. So I think that, again, it starts with human-centric design, smart urban planning that's really focused on the human and not the automobile. And I think we're starting to see some of those solutions with Brightline and All Aboard Florida and kind of the regional stops that are starting to happen on high ground, which was Henry Flagler's original plan. And what's interesting to see is kind of how the world is now looking to Miami for some of our assets and what we have, this multicultural, inclusive, international talent pool and very vibrant culture that are, is being imported from other places like the Middle East. There's a conference happening right now in Miami Beach for the Saudi Investment Trust, and a lot of talk and focus on Miami as being a center for, cultural demonstration, and it's something that we really have that many places in the world don't have. So I think that there's really a conversation to be had around community resilience and resilience in general as it relates to smart cities and technology. And a prime example was Babcock Ranch during the last hurricane, how it basically came out of the storm unscathed. And people say to you, whether you don't believe in climate change or you don't believe in some of these issues that can be politicized, do you believe in resilience? And I would say yes. I think we all believe in resilience. We all see climate events happening all the time. So I think it goes back to the intersection of technology and innovation and resilience, particularly around communities, as I'm seeing, and particularly in the work that I'm working in underserved communities.
Excellent. So now let's bring it a little bit closer to home. So we have the opportunity for Matt to localize, regionalize, and hyper-localize it for us.
Thank you very much. It's really an honor and a privilege to be here on this delightfully rainy afternoon. This is great, very cozy. My name is Matt Haggman. I previously was a reporter for 10 years, was a reporter most of the time at the Miami Herald, and then was at Knight Foundation, where I had the opportunity to reimagine Knight's work here in Miami, and a little over 10 years ago launched a program which at the time felt a bit of a stretch for Miami, and that was launching a whole initiative around building a tech and startup community in Miami with a thesis that ultimately talent and funding would become more mobile and new centers of innovation would emerge, and Miami can be one of those places. And now in my current role, I had the opportunity to think again about sort of what's next. And as we think about where Miami's going, in this case, specifically through an economic lens. And I work at a place called the Beacon Council, which is the economic development organization for Greater Miami, and lead an initiative called Opportunity Miami, which is all focused on where do we go next? So just think about the next 10, 20 years, just think about the Miami of 2040. What will that look like? And again, purely through an economic lens, as we think about where jobs and growth will be. And it was a little over a year ago that we sort of did the deep dive and said, here's what will be the key drivers. And really hit upon three things. But one, of course, for what we're talking about here, really want to dig in on. And the three are: one, continue to be a place where there's lots of entrepreneurship and innovation, the place where there's lots of company creation. Those are the places that are going to win. Two, here at a university, talent and inclusion, the places that provide ways for people to build new skills quickly and affordably and really, really well at an elite level too. Those are the places that are going to win. But third, climate and sustainability and resilience as a business driver, and really seeing it as the thing that more than anything else that will be driving economies, creating jobs, expanding opportunity for the next generation and the generation after that. Right? And where this, and in sum, that it presents, while of course it presents an existential threat to coastal cities such as Miami, along with many other places around the world, but it also presents the business opportunity of our lifetime. Right? And I say that because we're on a journey, right? Over the next 10, 20, 30 years, we're transitioning to an economy that's net zero. One that puts no more climate warming gases into the air than we take out. And so oftentimes we talk about that as this existential challenge, that if we don't do that, really bad things happen. That's all true. But also, though, this transition actually is one that presents enormous opportunity. The total addressable market here, after all, is the entire economy, right? The entire economy has to make this transition from how you manufacture things, to how we get around, to how we produce food, to how we cool and heat the places we live and work, to where we get our power from. Every one of those areas has to shift. And already we're beginning to see this play out, right? I mean, one example that's right in front of us as we look in the automotive industry, right? Where the transition to EVs is underway. And the thesis is that essentially we're going to see that in every part of our economy, and the places that lean into this will be the places that have real success and really benefit. And of course, if we listen closely enough, then there are people right now yelling it from the rooftops. I mean, Bill Gates wrote a whole book on the transition, and he writes in that book, he says, the places that build the zero carbon companies of the future will lead the global economy. Full stop. Right? So for us here in Miami, let's be one of those places. Indeed, Harvard Business School professor Rosabeth Moss-Kanter did a whole case study on Miami, which came out last year, talking about how Miami should position itself as a global solutions hub, right? The places where the latest innovations, the newest efforts are tried here first, right? And so in our work with Opportunity Miami, really trying to help convene, engage, hopefully provide thought leadership around this whole idea of seeing climate and all the challenges it presents, which of course are very, very real. And if we don't get this right, really bad things will happen. But amid all of that, this presents the opportunity of our lifetime to drive our economy, to create jobs, to expand opportunity. So thank you.
Terrific. Beautiful. All right, you will have a tough time trying to find a greater worldwide entrepreneur than our next speaker. She is both a scientist, a technologist, but also an entrepreneur with worldwide impact. Ingrid.
Who's that? I don't think this is on. I'm not sure. Well, I wanted to first thank our keynote speaker because I think he showed some amazing slides that I think will also highlight the science that we're all basing our comments on. And I've participated in many other talks where not everybody really got the science, but I think the slides we had earlier on were really good. And I think it also offers the opportunity for us to be a role model, like you just said, Matt, for everybody else in the world that is in a similar situation. So Miami having the resilient smart city playbook, I think can be an amazing role model for other cities that are in the same situation like us. And I don't know if you guys are familiar, but during the pandemic in May 2020, we had the opportunity to have Miami chosen as the first city, part of the World Smart City Economic Development Commission. And we thought we're going to be just an example about some of the emerging technologies and frontier technologies that we had developed and deployed in Miami. But now we have another opportunity, the climate resilience. So I want to invite all of you to participate. We're going to have a symposium very soon that's going to address that, and it's going to be worldwide. And I hope to engage many other cities around the world that, like Singapore, for instance, that would like to participate and collaborate with us. That's one. The second part I wanted to mention in my comments are 3 points. One, I think in addition to the technology, not only you mentioned blockchain, AI, digital twins, I think also quantum. Just a few days ago, I don't know if you guys saw it, but in California they had the Economist-sponsored quantum computing and quantum technology conference, where all the talk was about how quantum computing can accelerate not only many other industries, but also how it can contribute to the net zero economy. So technology, definitely. I also wanted to emphasize the fact that what we're doing here in Miami with technology can also complement what's being done by Google and NVIDIA with the digital twin of planet Earth. I think we can bring this hyper-local data as an augmenting data set to what they have currently. And then also strategic partnerships. As part of the World Economic Development Commission, we work with key stakeholders across the world, and that means government, business leaders, academic centers such as we are here, and entrepreneurs, and all of them complain about the same thing. All efforts right now for climate resilience seem inconsistent and incohesive. We have no interoperability, no accurate metrics yet that can be integrated and standardized in a global dashboard. So although we have a lot of efforts and a lot of amazing pilots around the world, there's no current cohesive way to bring all of that together. So I think having more collaboration at all levels between governments, business, technology, entrepreneurs in a cohesive, harmonized, aligned way would help a lot to drive this agenda forward. And then the last point I wanted to make, I think we see, I have an opportunity to talk around the world, and I see what I would call the climate divide. The same way we have a digital divide, I think there's a big deficit, and we have an opportunity to educate not only business leaders, but also key policymakers, legislators, with some of the slides we had today, but also how to translate this science into new business models, new investment instruments, new legislation, new regulatory guidelines, new standards. Right now, even if you convince someone from a science perspective, which I have an opportunity to do, but then they go, okay, so now what? What do I do tomorrow morning at 7? How do I actually bring this down to earth? So I think hyper-local data, I would make the case that we then have to have that bidirectional workflow to also convince them, but also show them how to act on it in a meaningful way. Because I think that's what I heard from mayors, vice mayors across the world. They have a very big difficulty not only understanding the science, but also deciding what type of technology is appropriate, because they're being flooded with thousands of vendors that bring amazing solutions. They all sound and look amazing, but they don't know how to actually vet those. And then they also don't know how to show the ROI. And that's why when we talk about business models and financial instruments, the last thing would also be making sure that we adjust budgeting cycles. Nothing fits with climate change. We just saw those beautiful slides where you have to think about years ahead, not just the next quarter for your investment earnings call. So I think, again, repeating kind of the 3 points, technology is very important, and I'm a very big passionate advocate for frontier technologies. But I would also say education, and that means from preschool to the highest levels of executive boardroom, C-suites, and governments. And then the last one is this interoperability and bridging this, what I would call climate resilience divide. So that's my comment. Thank you.
Outstanding. No, there's a button there. So we've localized it. We created a national, international panorama of what's going on. One of the resources that we have available here at the university, which is quite unique, is the IDIS, the Institute for Data Sciences and Computation. Why is that important? One, we have the talent, we have the technology, but we also have the processes to actually understand, do the heavy-duty analytics on a worldwide basis. So we're very fortunate right now to change the conversation over a little bit more onto the technology side. And we have two representatives from the IDISC right now to share it with us. Yelena?
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Yelena Yesha. I'm Director of Artificial Intelligence and Machine Learning Program at Institute of Data Science and Computing, as well as I'm Chief Innovation Officer for the Institute, and have a privilege to be also Knight Foundation Endowed Chair in Computer Science and this secondary appointment in radiology. So all this area of resilience and smart cities is very dear to my heart, as well as I have a background where I had the privilege also to run National Academy of Sciences Institute at NASA Goddard, where we dealt with a lot of problems in the weather and resilience and geographic locations. And then more recently, we had the privilege to work with Rudy, as well as a big corporation in Tallahassee and FSU, where they are actually building the smart homes which have the resilience and have health nexus from one perspective. At the same time, they have an ability to deal with potential weather hazards and things like that. I would like to capitalize on what Ingrid said in terms of actually being able not just to look at the technology, because technology for the most part is here. What are the policy issues? What are the adoptions? And what are the business models? Because at the end of the day, when we are talking to our next generation developers, we're looking at the business leaders. They're looking at the way of how you monetize and how you actually integrate this amazing technology into everybody's life, right? And this comes from the people who are underrepresented all the way to the affluent community. So proximity healthcare, ability to be able to get an access to resources in case of natural disasters like weather, being able to integrate industrial and structural engineering components and understanding what will happen to the buildings in case of Hurricane 4 and 5 hits, and how do we actually articulate and deal with this problem in a sense. So capitalizing on what Ben said, which is very important, it's not just integration and interoperability of data, it's data fusion. Because from my perspective, it's also how do you bring all the sources of information and how do you integrate it and how you create real-time solution. In our situation, what is important is real-timeness, right? So we need to be able to react to and be prepared for all kinds of catastrophic events, right? And anticipating all of this, and I claim all the responsibility at the same time, all the kind of glory. About 6 years ago, I had the privilege to create a national center funded by National Science Foundation called CARTA, Center for Accelerated Real-Time Analytics. And it's not about the big data, it's not about data fusion, it's not about data interoperability, it's beyond that. How do you accelerate computation again, capitalizing on what Ingrid said, quantum computing, high-performance computing, like we are privileged to have here in IDEX, like Triton, and how do we extract knowledge and actionable data from the information. So what I'm driving here at, the technologies for the most part is here. So what we need is to fuse the data to create a multimodal kind of analytics and see how we can monetize it, how we can take it to the next level of building this next generation of smart homes, smart cities. Because I see smart home as a nuclear. It's the same like family is a nuclear of the society. Smart homes are nuclear of smart cities, because smart homes goes into offices and you name it, and now as the whole thing gets more decentralized and people working more and more from home and having this opportunity, we want to make sure that the smart environments, for the better word, is the part of our daily life. And in order to achieve the smart environment situation, we need to interoperate to begin with, but then we need to fuse the data, create multimodal AI solutions that would drive our real-time analytics, that would enable us to capitalize on all of this technology, but also make it economically viable. Because one thing is to have technology. The other thing is to make this technology viable in the business world, but then you want to democratize it and make it available to the entire society, because obviously the economics is not there for everybody to be able to adopt and accept and have an access. So, so going back to what we mentioned already here, AI, distributed AI, blockchain technology, and it's not about single technology. And AI, despite the fact I'm director of AI and machine learning, is not a magic, right? There are many cases where AI doesn't work. So we scientists need to understand where AI works, where it's economically viable, and where it doesn't work, so we should not waste our resources from the business perspective and try to incorporate things that don't make sense into situations where perhaps regular, maybe statistical approaches or other approaches would work much better at a much lower cost. We are more about global analytics that are viable, economically feasible, and we are all about democratizing the access to the technology and to the power of the technology that we have and the power of the data that we are collecting here. So while the smart city with resilience is a fantastic thing, we should go even beyond that and try to understand what is there from the economic perspective. Because again, if you're looking at smart cities and looking at the climate, there's two big areas that are converging here together. So the question is how it drives the other sectors of the economy and integrate all of this into global kind of economic models that are going to be viable and economically feasible. Because as the whole global economy is now going into some sort of mini crisis, but I view every every crisis is an mini crisis. Well, I'm just trying to be gentle. So so every crisis is an opportunity. So this is an opportunity for us technologists here at UMiami with our unique location here to come with solutions that would actually adapt to the specific environment and take us to the next level. So I propose we don't build bridges, we jump. Let's make a quantum jump, which has nothing to do with quantum computing. It's a quantum jump from the physics of previous century that would enable us to gain enough energy and come to the next economic prosperity.
Outstanding. One of the things that is very evident is technology has tremendous monetary value, but ultimately knowledge has even more value. So one of the key assets of the iDisk is the ability to capture massive amount of international data, synthesize it, but structure it for applicability, for commercialization. How to create knowledge as a utility, knowledge as a monetary impetus to move forward. Okay? So we're very, very fortunate to have the deep scientists in artificial intelligence, such as David, to move us forward.
Thank you. Can everybody hear me? Ah, yes. Well, it's very nice to be here. My name is David Chapman. I'm an associate professor of computer science with the University of Miami, as well as a member of the Institute of Data Science and Computing. My research is in machine learning and artificial intelligence, and in particular, I'm interested in the gap, because I believe there's a gap between the kinds of technologies that we've been able to demonstrate in a lab on toy problems versus when we actually go to deploy these new technologies in the real world. We always encounter obstacles. What happens when the algorithms encounter data that they haven't seen before? Or what happens when the technology is used in a way when it was unintended? So those are the kinds of problems that I'm looking at, both from a theoretical aspect as well as a practical one. Now, my thoughts about smart cities. When you think about a smart city as the integration of advanced technologies for the improvement of public infrastructure, utilities, smart home, transportation, I think this is not something that's a lofty goal or something that is that's far away. I think the smart city is something that's already here. I mean, let me give you just a very simple example that I think everybody can relate to. I've certainly used, and I'm sure many people have used GPS and as well as the real-time traffic management to avoid a traffic accident, right? A technology like that can improve the utilization of underutilized roads and is dependent on an available network of GPS of other drivers that's accessible in real time. When you look at the transformations that are happening in terms of our power grid, moving from a model of a few fossil fuel power plants to a more decentralized model with clean energy and a wide variety of supercharging stations, right? Those are all transformations that are happening organically. Although I think we need to be careful that a lot of the corporate involvement is targeted toward individual stakeholders or entities, and how can this be more collectively targeted toward quality of life for citizens within a city. I think that's something where the integration and oversight and policy can all play an important role. Now, as a machine learning person, one question that kind of comes to my mind is, how can machine learning play a role in this transformation? And one of the things that I think is really incredible is just how machine learning as a field has changed and improved within the last 10 to 15 years. It used to be that if you had a problem with a specific data set, that you needed to put a lot of effort into making a very problem-specific model. But now, a lot of the technologies that we have are applicable against a wide variety of disciplines with roughly the same underlying technology. The difference is the data. When we think about data, right, we need to be able to connect the algorithms with, not just toy data sets in a lab, which we do that very, very well. It's incredible how well we do that, but we need to be able to integrate the algorithms with real-world data that is collected in real time with the oversight of people that are more visionary, that can help us to identify not just, okay, how do we make our algorithm a little bit better, but what problem should we be solving and why? And I think that's something that requires an expertise, that there's not one person that has all of the expertise to solve all of these problems simultaneously. We need to bring people together with different points of view and really have a conversation, identify the directions that we can go, and then from there, I think we'll start to make or continue to expand on this tremendous progress in the area of smart cities. Thank you.
One of the more important elements and dimensions of all of our decisions are the ethics of our decisions. What are the implications to society of it? We're very fortunate at the university to have a 30-plus year veteran of ethics that has been participating in multiple of the colleges within the university. Kenneth?
Thank you very much. And welcome. Smart Cities has evolved over the past several years as both an index of our institution's interest and commitment to this, but also a recognition that you're talking about a city, it's going to include exactly what. If I, for example, had arrived today from my home planet and I ran across the sign Smart Cities, I might ask y'all, if they're not already smart, what are they now? You know, the old joke that artificial intelligence is no match for human stupidity. What we try to do with new technology on a regular basis, and this is the history of civilization to the best of my knowledge, is we figure out what's an appropriate use and who is an appropriate user of the technology. The democratization of electronics, for example, and microelectronics is extraordinary depending on how old you are, I suppose. There are people in the world actually who remember the days when you would go to a meeting, you had no phone with you, there was no computer to check your email, and if you needed to talk to somebody, you had a roll of quarters pulled over in your car and went into a phone booth. I actually saw a payphone the other day, and I thought I had entered a museum or some time warp. The speed with which things are changing is both exhilarating and alarming. What I think we want to do, and I think that this is very clear here, is signal not just IDISC and the University of Miami, but our partners around the state and around the world. Bienvenidos. We've been collaborating with our colleagues from Colombia for many, many years on a number of different projects. I'm a philosopher, but I'm also a professor in the Department of Medicine and philosophy and so forth. And what we've gotten to do is learn about how other communities address, solve, and sometimes cause new problems. When it comes to information technology, it's clear we need to do a much better job gathering it, call that surveillance if you like. We need to do a really good job analyzing it, and then we need to plan. Are we going to do a better job than we have for the last couple thousand years? Because if you look at a really cool, beautiful, exhilarating city like Miami, you will also see examples where we have done a miserable to awful job in sharing. Is your smart city going to be smart cities only for people who can afford to live there? And that challenge, the one that we've been grappling with on this planet for the last several thousand years, either A, is become something that we're going to run up against, or we say, given the scientists, given the communicators, given the other scientists, the entrepreneurs, and people who think about this, we actually don't have a whole lot more opportunities to get it wrong. Y'all have just not done a very good job sharing with each other. There are people in Miami now in the rain who are in a food line if you go far enough west. Are they going to be in the not so smart part of the smart city? What are we going to do to try and do that a little bit better? Some of this is about politics, some of it's about policy, but the reason you've included me is because what I believe we can signal are universal values that can be communicated in ways that encourage people to realize that when you're a member of a community, you get to do your business, but it's associated with a number of responsibilities, if you will. In business ethics, we call it corporate social responsibility. No one's going to come and nationalize the business for you. Don't worry about that. We just want to make sure that if you're going to be doing well, and no one begrudges you that, you are thinking about the community in which you were able to make your profit in the first place. And that's an opportunity, I think, in terms of business, in terms of communication, in terms of technology, and in terms of basic science, because at the end of the day, we're at a university, and some of the science here is exhilarating. When you start talking about at the level of quanta. Our opportunity, and IDISC has seized this opportunity, in addition to AI, in addition to programming, in addition to Triton, we actually have a program in data ethics and society. And to include that, including me here, is for UM, for the University of Miami, for the Miami-Dade County, for all of Florida, because we actually partner with people, even though they have inferior basketball and football teams, to collaborate with us in what looks like an extraordinary state, an environmentally very sensitive state, to think about how together we can build the kind of city that's not just smart. Smart may be the easy part. We're going to figure out a way to make it so that it is smart and fair, smart and just, and smart in such a way that those of us who've had the pleasure of making children somewhere along the line can say with some confidence, I think we actually might have this. And on that note, namely a positive note about our community, visitors to our community, and the idea that you will not do good science, and you will not do good planning, and you will not do good business without ethics. 3 cheers for you all being here, for visiting our beautiful campus, and slogging through the rain. Thank you very much.
It's amazing that we're blessed with such talent here locally. So thank you for the opportunity to share our ideas. Any one of these folks could have given a week, but they condensed their thoughts into 5 minutes. So to IDIS, to the opportunity, to the College of Architecture, thank you very much for your time, and enjoy the rest of the conference.
It was worth it just listening to all